uh, he went and reported it to the county sheriff's office and filed a report. And when he did, they discovered that it wasn't the only report. There had been a number of people who had seen this. A couple named Tom and Mary Wave, their car had been attacked by they didn't know what. The car antenna was chewed on, and there were scratches that were just like on the 17-year-old's car all over theirs. And there are also muddy three-toed footprints. People from the area started, I think it was Bishopsville was the name of the town, started reporting seeing this creature with blazing red eyes and looking at them as they were having dinner, which is terrifying. But eventually the sightings went away, and this is normal. I mean, not normal, but a typical lizard man sort of sighting, and they've been reported, mostly on the East Coast, but in a lot of states.
Interesting. Now, in like Arizona, there's supposed to be something like the Mothman that come out of caves and stuff like that. Now, are you familiar with anything like that?
Like Mothman?
Kind of, flying creatures that kind of resemble like the devil.
Well, there are what people have reported to be, some call them thunderbirds, some call them, when they describe them, they're more like pterodactyls. And there were some of those that were reported from Arizona. And, this is something that I'm fascinated by, is the possibility that there's still dinosaurs out there. There were a lot of creatures killed by the extinction 65 million years ago, but there are a lot of creatures that weren't killed. I mean, why wouldn't some dinosaurs have escaped? There are reports from all over the world, from Africa, from New Guinea, Australia, China, South America, Central America, and Arizona and Texas and New Mexico, and Kansas of all places, of these enormous bat-like creatures that people have seen, and they are described as anywhere from having a 12-foot wingspan to a 25-foot wingspan. They have a crested head, a beak with teeth, really sharp teeth, lizard-like skin, bat-like wings, and a tail with a diamond shape on the end of it. And these have been seen by anyone from kids who looking out their back door to high school science teachers. So I mean that's the sort of thing that might be flying in our sky today, which I would love to see.
Well, I would too, but I'm going to go back to Joe Taylor again, because he has traveled the world, gathering bones and reconstructing them and all that stuff. He claimed back years ago he was in Africa, and one of the natives come running into this little village he was at and claimed that he saw a dinosaur, like a mini T-Rex. Now, because of the oxygen content and all this stuff, talking to scientists, they told me there's no way a huge dinosaur could exist with our oxygen content on our planet today. So what that Joe said, that this native come running in, he was out, looking to kill, wild boar pigs. And he had a spear. And all of a sudden, he was getting ready to kill this, pig, or whatever you want to call it. And like a mini T-Rex, it stood about 9 feet tall, grabbed the pig. Now, he threw the spear at the T-Rex and then took off running. So he goes back to the village. Nobody in the village believed him. Yeah, sure, okay. The next morning, they go out, and they found the boar, and they found the T-Rex, with the T-Rex having the pig in its mouth. And supposedly, what Joe said, it was about 9 feet tall.
Well, if they were going to be anywhere, I would think Africa or South America.
Oh yeah.
And there have been a number of cases. Let's go back to the pterodactyls. They're I can't remember the man's name because the interview I had with him was a long time ago. But he was at the time he was a professor at the University of Missouri, and he had trips to Africa on the east coast of Africa, and the local villagers where he went had tales of the Kogamatu, and they were described like like a pterodactyl. And on one of his trips, he took a book with a picture, a drawing of what a pterodactyl would look like, and they're like, "That's it. That is the Kogamatu." There's a similar story from the Republic of the Congo about the Micalia Mamimbe. I'm probably butchering that, which that name means he who dams up rivers. And their description of this creature is, a Apatosaurus. The long, slender neck, large body, 4 legs, long tail. And it's not huge like, a brachiosaur or something like that. It's a lot smaller. It's about the size of like a rhinoceros. So, I mean, again, about the what you mentioned about the oxygen content not being enough, because the oxygen content back during the dinosaur era was a lot more. It not being enough to support an enormous dinosaur, well, it would be enough to support a dinosaur that was as big as a rhino. And they, just like the picture of the pterodactyl, they were shown a picture of an Apatosaurus, and they're like, "That's it." There are so many times when we ignore stories of natives. We ignored the native stories about the mountain gorilla, about the okapi, about the giant panda, and so many other things that turned out to be real. Why aren't some of these other things?
Well, I can't believe all the species of dinosaurs all died out. I think what is maybe left of them is still roaming in certain parts of this world. That maybe I'm totally wrong, but I mean, there's been, like you just mentioned, reports, and there's been a lot of these reports going through the years. I'm 60, going on 68 years old, and I remember these type of reports going on for years.
Right. I mean, they have, but I mean, they're completely discounted because science says dinosaurs are all dead. They've turned into birds. Well, if you want a dinosaur, get a fried chicken plate. There you go.
Yeah.
There's your dinosaur.
Yeah.
But I mean, what I was talking about before, about there's so much of this world that we literally haven't explored, and I'm not even to the oceans yet. What sort of prehistoric beasts are still out there? We have, satellite-wise, mapped 95% of the ocean's bottom. But we also have not explored 95% of the ocean, period. So anything could exist out there. I mean, the popular one, which I'm going to talk about, is the coelacanth, which was a fish that became extinct. We knew it from its fossils. It became extinct 65 million years ago. But in 1936, a captain who was aboard a fishing boat, they caught a fish that he didn't recognize. And, I mean, it looked strange enough that he called the local museum, and a professor came out there, and she looked at it, and she was like, "Oh, my God, you caught a coelacanth." And the natives knew what it was. They'd been selling it at fish markets because there was a breeding population, in South Africa. There's also, they found a breeding population around Indonesia. So, I mean, that's a prime example of something that was hidden, crypto, that is now, it's now part of science. And what else are we going to find?
Well,
I mean, the oceans are enormous.
And ever so often on a beach, something washes ashore that baffles scientists because they didn't even know it existed yet or even existed. I mean, there was one here a couple months ago, it washed up. I can't remember where, but it was prehistoric. And they said they something like that shouldn't have even lived, in our time frame, let alone maybe 1 million years ago. It's kind of scary.
Well, right. But yeah, I mean, seriously, but the oceans are so enormous. Does the name Thor Heyerdahl ring a bell? A
little bit. I've heard it.
Yeah, he was a Norwegian anthropologist and a cultural anthropologist, and he had a hypothesis that the people that settled the Polynesian islands went from Peru to Polynesia, and he was scoffed at by his colleagues because there's no way with the type of rafts that they had that they could traverse 4,000 miles of open ocean. And he was so convinced that he decided, I'm going to do this. So he and a few other Norwegian scientists built a raft using, the tools that they would have had back in the day in Peru. They built a raft and set sail for Polynesia. And they went on areas that were not in the shipping lanes, of course, because it was way out in the middle of nowhere. It was the raft was called the Kon-Tiki.
I remember that.
And he had reported, he kept an extensive diary and wrote a book that's excellent called the Kon-Tiki, that at night, when he'd be sitting out of the little tent area that they had and just looking at the water, that in the middle of nowhere, there were lights that were moving underneath the raft. And he was like, it looked like something alive. But all the creatures that we know of that make their own light, that are, the luminescent ones, like an anglerfish, are, used to being so far down that if they came up to that, that level, they couldn't survive. So what on earth, out in the middle of nowhere, was making its own light underwater following the Kon-Tiki?
There was something. I remember they had a public broadcast. Actually, the guy filmed a lot of it, made a documentary. And it was, so interesting what they went through. And who knows what those creatures were, or were they creatures? Were they maybe UFOs under the water? I don't know.
It could be anything. Right. The point was, we have no bloody clue what is under our oceans. It could be anything. It could have been UFOs. It could have been some creature that we still haven't identified. It's the possibilities are amazing.
Yeah, and we're still finding things out on a daily basis that we thought maybe didn't exist. It still exists. Hey, Jason, we need to go on a break, so maybe this is the time you want to go get another cup of Java. We'll be back in about 3 minutes. I'm going to put you on mute, so don't hang up, okay?
All right, I'll be here.
Okay. So anyway, tell your friends about Night Dreams Talk Radio. You can find us at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. Share us on your media. Our listenership is growing. I mean, we have a worldwide, listenership. And if you haven't noticed, our guests have really drastically improved on our show. And that's because we have a large listenership base. We're going to be taking a station break. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes. So go get a nice cup of Java or a hot cocoa, or even a bourbon might work tonight. We'll be back in a short period of time.
Would like to hear Night Dreams Talk Radio on your local radio station? Let them know. Tell them to check out www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. And thank you.